So hi everyone, and welcome to the session about everything you wanted to know about Microsoft Dynamics 365 certifications and some more as well. So today's session is actually made for you as part of the Empower Your Career event, which was initially launched by Victor Dantes, who's a MVP based out of Calgary, Alberta in Canada. And this session is going to be about certifications. So I'm going to try to make the session relatively quick because I know that a lot of you are going to have a ton of questions at the end. So I just want to make sure that I can get to as many questions as I humanly can. So if you do have a question, just put it into the chat box. And then my awesome moderator, Joe, is going to take note of it so that at the Q&A, we can just answer all of those questions. So first, I'm going to share my screen and go through the presentation. Screen one. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, looking good.
Looking good. Perfect. Thank you. So welcome to the Empower Your Career conference. So now this is the everything you want to know about Microsoft Dynamics certifications and some more. So in today's agenda, we are going to talk about the Microsoft Partner Competency Requirements and why they are so important. We are going to have a look at the Microsoft Dynamics 365 certification landscape. And I'm going to also talk about what decision framework to help you decide what certification you should go for at this stage of your career, because that is probably the most frequently asked question I ever get is, what certification should I go for? So I have a framework for you. Then I'm going to show you how you can include your certifications on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. I actually got a lot of feedback from a lot of hiring managers as well as recruiters because I have quite a few. So I have some tips for you on that. I'm also going to tell you all the study and preparation advice I can, as well as a lot of study resources. So for example, if you want to become certified, where should you go for to get ready for said certifications? And then the last topic I'm going to cover, which is so important, but that nobody talks about, is the stress management component. So if you have listened to my interview with Mark Smith on the Power Platform podcast, I talk about how the fact that I started MS Dynamics Certified as sort of my own therapy, because I have quite severe anxiety, which I go in detail in that particular episode of the podcast. So I'm going to give you the tools that work for me in terms of stress management. Now, full disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a psychologist. So if it becomes really unbearable, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to seek professional help in that domain. So what are the Microsoft Partner Competency Requirements and why are they so important? The first thing that I don't mention on my slide simply because of space is the fact that right now, 34% of Microsoft Dynamics 365 professionals have up-to-date certifications, and that is based on the 2019-2020 Nigel Frank salary survey. However, that was right before the launch of the new job-based certifications that replaced the older versions of those certifications, which means that this percentage is actually expected to go even further down. In the meanwhile, so in parallel to that, about 50% of Microsoft Dynamics 365 professionals work for what's called a Microsoft partners. So those are IT consultancy firms that implement Microsoft Dynamics 365, which means, as you can see, there's sort of an imbalance between how many people are certified in Microsoft Dynamics 365 versus the demand from employers of people that are certified in Microsoft Dynamics 365. So the reason why you want to look at the Microsoft Partner Competency Requirements is because this helps you and guides you in terms of what certifications do I need so that I count for those partner competency requirements. So there's a new model coming in effect on October 1st, which means that from now on, it's not going to be based on numbers, it's going to be based on points. So in the new point system, 35% of all the points you can get is based on how many employees you have certified, and also what certifications do those employees have. In all instances, so whether you qualify under functional consultant associate, functional consultant associate growth, or the developer, and by the way, there might be a separate points category for solution architect in the future. In all those instances, passing the MB200 examination, which is the Dynamics 365 Empower Platform Core, is mandatory. So when we look at the decision framework, as you can see, all path goes through that exam, so you have to go through it. There is also the fact that passing one functional consultant or developer associate certification is mandatory. And on top of that, if you want to go completely crazy and do both, you actually count twice in the points model, which means it makes you a more attractive candidate, because if you look at, again, the 2019-2020 Nigel Frank salary survey, the biggest challenge in pretty much every implementation project is lack of resources or lack of qualified resources. So having a certification really helps you go towards being a qualified resource. So now you see this big graph and there's a lot of options. So let me sort of guide you through it. So you have two certifications at the fundamentals level, which are PL900, the Power Platform Fundamentals. And then you have the MB901, which is the Dynamics 365 Fundamentals. Those are useful for two categories of people, which is the first one being you never pass a single Microsoft certification in your life. And for you, because you don't know the format of the exam and you don't necessarily know the style of those Microsoft exams, if that's you, I would go for a fundamental certification. The second category of people, which I fall under, is either you are someone that offers online courses about certifications, which I qualify, but the other one is you want to pass solution architect down the road and you have such severe exam anxiety that you don't want to take the risk of not knowing every single certification material out there. So those two exams, whether or not you want to go through the customer engagement or CRM route, or you want to go to more the finance and operations side or the ERP route, those exams would be useful for both of them. So unfortunately, if you came here to learn about finance and operations certifications, I'm sorry, I don't know much about it, other than you should go for the core finance and operations before you go for a product exam. I'm sorry. So for people who are interested in the CRM space, your first one and the functional consultant associate or the developer should be MB200 regardless. And then you have a bunch of product or developer exams. So first one, the developer exam is MB400, which is there. And then you have 4 product exams, which are MB210 Dynamics 365 for sales, MB220 Dynamics 365 for marketing, MB230 Dynamics 365 for customer service, MB240 Dynamics 365 field service, and those are your product option. Then if you want to be super motivated and really take it to the next level, you can get either the developer certification or the functional consultant certification and be eligible to appear for the solution architect exam, which gives you the solution architect expert certification. I know it's a lot and that might seem overwhelming, which is why I did this very useful decision framework. This is what I wish I did actually quite earlier, simply because this is the #1 question I get. So the first sort of question you should ask yourself is, did you pass a Microsoft certification of any product? So if you're someone coming from the SharePoint ecosystem, Power BI ecosystem, Azure, Office 365, all of those, if you did not pass any of that, I would actually start at Dynamics 365 Fundamentals, simply to get the stress out and for you to be familiar with the Microsoft Dynamics 365 ecosystem, but to also be familiar with the style of questions that Microsoft has, simply because for you, in your case, because you're new to the field, going for MB200 straight away is going to be quite a steep learning curve and quite stressful. So because you passed one exam, you go into MB200 with greater confidence and a bit of knowledge and a bit of headway. So then your next question is going to be, have you passed MB200? If the answer is no, then you should go for it. That should be your first exam. If not, then you go to the next sort of decision node, which is, do you want to be a developer? And if you want to be a developer, do you already know C# and JavaScript? If the answer to that is yes, then you should go for a developer exam, simply because overall, especially in Canada, so that might be a very Canadian point of view, because a lot of Canadian developers work on US contract or worked in Canadian government contract. There's a greater demand in Canada for the developer exam. So that might be, again, it may change in your country. So just ask in the Dynamics community forum in terms of your own country, what is the current situation. Now, the other question, which is useful for people who live in Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, in Canada, if you live in Canberra and Australia, if you live pretty much anywhere in the UK, and also if you live in the DC area in the United States of America, is, are you a citizen of the country that you live in? Are you eligible for a security clearance? And finally, do you live in an area where there's a significant portion of contracts are from the government? If you answer yes to all three, then you should really go, and I cannot insist on this enough, for MB230, which is Dynamics 365 for customer service, because that software is heavily used by a lot of governments around the world in order for them to go towards the digital revolution and for them to be able to offer better, more efficient services to its citizens. So, I mean, I have stories about recruiters from Ottawa who call me quite often. So, I mean, if you are Canadian and you're willing to relocate to Ottawa, send me your resume immediately. I have a few recruiters who want to speak to you. Then if you answer no to that question, then my next question for you would be, do you already work with a first-party app, which is an app made by Microsoft, which includes sales, marketing, customer service, or field service on a daily basis? Or do you have a particular expertise in the subject? So for example, if you're coming from a marketing background and you worked in terms of marketing campaigns, emails, and stuff like that, then I would go for the marketing examination first. If your background is from customer success, I would go for customer service first, and so on and so forth. If you have no idea at this point, after passing MB200, what product certification you would go for, then I would go for sales, simply because unless you live in a government-heavy area, this is probably going to be the most commonly used product. Then that brings us to the next decision node, which is, do you want to get the solution architect certification at this point? If the answer is no, and you want to do more certifications, then I would pass another product examination, which would lead to you getting another functional consultant associate one. Then, if you want to go for solution architect at one point in time, did you pass MB901, which is the Dynamics fundamentals, and the Power Platform fundamentals one, which is PL900? If no, Again, this comes from someone with pretty bad exam anxiety. I would pass those just to make sure that you have all your bases covered without a doubt, without a sweat, before going for MB600. So that's my framework. I know that in the Q&A, I'm going to be bombarded with people's actual cases and asking me, hey, this is my situation, which one should I go for? I will be happy to answer those. Now, resumes and LinkedIn profile. So essentially, what happened, and this is a true story, I got a freelance contract simply because I had my Click Dimensions certifications on my LinkedIn profile. And also, you would be surprised in terms of how many recruiters scout LinkedIn and scout the Dynamics community profile of people to look for potential candidates. So here's my advice to you. If you have a LinkedIn profile, first of all, if you don't, get one right now, I mean, after the presentation, and list all of your exams one by one based on the official Microsoft name, because sometimes those recruiters are given very, very specifics. So for example, the job that I'm starting on May 1st, the hiring manager was looking for someone who specifically passed field service, which is MB240, which is the first one in my LinkedIn profile. And my profile got picked up simply because I listed it. And you want to list everything in detail because, again, you have the space. Now, for your resume, this is where it's going to vary a lot by country. So in Canada, a 2-page resume is perfectly acceptable. So normally you should have enough space to put, Microsoft Certified Dynamics 365 Functional Consultant Associate, and then list all of your qualifying examination by number and by name. Again, because a lot of this hiring game, number one, is based on keywords. So you want your resume to be picked up by those automated systems, which are called ATS, for a human being to see. And by having those keywords on your LinkedIn profile and your resume, you significantly increase your chance to get a phone call by HR. And also because those human resources people, they are expert in what they do. They're great in HR, they're great in recruiting, they're great in talent acquisition. Unfortunately, they're not technical experts. And a lot of them associate certifications with, what you're talking about, and I can present you to the hiring manager without looking bad. So whether or not that's ethical or good or bad, I'm not here to discuss that at all. You just have to accept that it's a fact of life and it actually helps you. Another thing why this is so important, again, this is a very Canadian specific issue, is the fact that when the Canadian government puts those requests for proposal and wants a Microsoft partner to bid on a government contract for a particular ministry, a lot of the times you would be surprised to see that MB230 and having consultants who have passed the customer service examination is actually mentioned by name. So again, this is another reason why you should get certified and why you should really list your resume, list your certifications on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Now, study resources. So for the last 3 years, you probably know me in the community as the one who always complains about brain dumps, and I'm going to spend quite some time talking about it. So the first reason why brain dumps are, I know that there's a lot of people from many countries to whom studying from past examination is the cultural norm. For example, when people study for a lot of university entrance examinations, such as the GMAT if you want to study in business school, or the LSAT if you want to go to law school, and the SAT, and the name your favorite university entrance exam. A lot of the time, past study questions are officially released by those examinations companies. And a lot of the time, students love to study from those because it gives them more confidence. And it is also, in many, many countries around the world, acceptable and even expected for students to study from past exam questions. However, when it comes to the Microsoft certification space, this is something that is discouraged, and this is something that Microsoft has even banned. And I can tell you, because I talked to a lot of people at Microsoft about this topic, and I can tell you that if you are caught sharing brain dumps, you are getting a lifetime ban from any Microsoft examination for pretty much the rest of your life. So this is something that, again, I'm not making a statement on whether studying from past questions is good or bad. I'm just saying that this is Microsoft's policy and we should all adhere to it. Another reason why brain dumps are actually ethically, morally wrong is the fact that those questions that end up on brain dumps are actually, some of them are real examination questions, which means when I went to school, if, for example, someone saw an exam sheet from a teacher and they got it and they sent it to their friend, I would have been expelled immediately, and this would have been on my academic record for the rest of my life. This is the exact same situation, and I can tell you that Microsoft has put a lot of effort to diminish the brain dump's effectiveness and to diminish the number of questions that do leak on brain dumps. So when I started 3 years ago, when I saw that brain dumps were actually a problem, about 70% of exam questions were actually leaked on those brain dump websites. Now today, it's less than 25%. So in the span of 2-3 years, Microsoft has learned a lot, and these brain dumps are becoming less and less effective. And I can tell you that when Microsoft figures out that a particular question is leaked, they try to replace it by another one. So don't use them, please. Just don't. There's so many reasons why not to. So if you want to look for good, legitimate, ethical, awesome study resources, here's a great list. The first place you should look at is Microsoft Learn. The website is quite easy. It's microsoft.com/learn. And it's free for anyone, regardless of country. It's amazing. It's quite complete. There are some gaps, but honestly, very, very few. Another awesome resource is Neil Parker's blog. If you are looking to pass MB200 or any functional consultant associate certification, his blog is mind-blowingly amazing. Then our awesome moderator, Joe Griffin, is working on a blog post series on his blog, the CRM Chap. If for you want to pass the MB400, which is the developer certification, it's an amazing resource. He's doing an amazing job, so shout out. Another great resource, which I spend a lot of time in, the Dynamics Community Forum, which is available again for 100% free at community.dynamics.com. If you have any question and say, hey, I'm really struggling, for example, with a product catalog, can someone help me? There will be a ton of people that will be willing to sort of clarify your question. And if you go on that forum and you ask, hey, I saw this question on brain dump, you're going to get a lot of responses, people saying, hey, you should not use brain dumps, but here's a ton of great resources like the one that I'm mentioning out there. And another great resource is if your employer is part of the CRM user group or CRMUG, they have so many study groups. They have a huge library of documents that are really, really useful when it comes to those exams and those certifications. So if you're part of it, that would be probably the second place I would look at after going on Microsoft Learn. Finally, you probably heard about it. So I do have my own online course for certifications, which is called MS Dynamics Certified. So I write my own practice exams, and I write 100 questions per exam, and you get 2 full-length practice exams for. So far, the ones that are out are all the functional consultant associate ones. So study tips. First tips is to use multiple methods for better retention. So instead of reading Microsoft Learn or watching a YouTube video about a topic, take notes, use flashcards, practice the concepts, and use those multiple methods so that your brain better remembers that particular topic. Another topic that is very popular in the psychology space is passive versus active learning. You should try to use what are qualified as active learning method simply because your brain remembers those concepts better. So the 2 active methods that are practical if you're studying for a Microsoft Dynamics 365 examination is to take notes, or my personal favorite is flashcards. So what happened is you go to a paper store, or better yet these days, order them online. You can use 3 by 9 inches flashcards and sort of write a question on one side and say, for example, what is the first-party application that manages call centers and other customer service scenario? And then you put the answer on the other side, which is Microsoft Dynamics 365 for customer service. Or, you can create much better questions than that, of course. Now, if you have access to one, I really encourage you to practice whatever concept that you might be studying in a sandbox instance. So a test instance or any other name for a sandbox. So for example, if you are studying how to create a workflow in Microsoft Dynamics 365, I would highly encourage you to, watch a demonstration and pause it and then do that particular action in your sandbox and then replay the video and then redo that particular action. That is what I did actually for my very first certification. And I've stuck with it ever since. So highly encouraged. Another thing is to limit your study sessions to one topic at a time. So if you're studying workflow, study workflows. Don't try to overstretch yourself and say, okay, so today's Saturday, it's the weekend, I'm not working, I'm gonna study workflows and business rules and Power Automate and Power BI and a bunch of other stuff, because your brain is not going to remember those concepts as effectively. Another thing is practice 50 questions, which is roughly the amount of questions on the actual exam, in an environment which is similar to your exam. So don't have your phone, don't open Google, don't have a book next to you, and time yourself to make sure that you would be able to finish an entire exam on time. So what I recommend you to do is to give yourself 1 hour, which is 60 minutes, to finish 50 questions, so that at the end you have 30 minutes to sort of review your question. Because trust me, when you're going to be stressed and anxious in the exam, a bit like I do, you're going to revise your questions at least 3 times. So I want to make sure that you're successful on those stressful moments and that you take that time into consideration. Stress management. So again, full disclosure, those are the tips that work for me. I'm not a mental health professional, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not a doctor. So what worked for me is to, number 1, avoid caffeine and alcohol. The reason why is, number 1, those are the 2 things that prevent good sleep. So you want to make sure that you sleep extremely well the day before your exam to make sure that your brain is fully refreshed. Another thing is that those 2 substances are actually stimulants, which means they're going to alter a lot of the neurotransmitters in your brain. So we want to make sure that your brain is relaxed and is as stress-free as possible. Another thing is do some yoga or do some meditation the night before. There's a lot of great resources on the internet for that. The ones that I personally use is a YouTube channel called Yoga with Adrian, which is amazing. And for meditation, you can use either Calm or Insight Timer. Yes. Another thing is the day of, a lot of people have a lot of jitters and have really excess energy because of those stress. So really do something intense. You can go running, you can go cycling, you can do a class such as F45 or CrossFit just to get that excess energy out. In fact, the majority of those exams I personally passed, I was in gym clothing and I just came back from the gym. And that works great. Also, when you study the day before or you study the day of, only study revision notes. This is not the time to study a particular topic. This is not the time to even do a practice exam. This is not the time to really go deep into anything. You just want to remember those broad concepts and really go at the surface, because when you book your exam, you should know every topic inside out. So now I will be happy to answer any question you might have. Really, this is a ask me anything.
Okay, so we've got a few questions already that have come up. I can just sort of run through them if that helps. So we've got a question, first of all, about resources for MB400, because there's not a lot out there at the moment. Is there anything else that you can recommend on that?
MB400, well, first of all, your en blanc Joe is really amazing. I would look at that. I would look at Microsoft Learn. And there's also on GitHub, if you look carefully, there's going to be a series of labs. So those are the places I would look at. I will be happy to send a link, by the way. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm going to make a post with all those resources.
Okay, great stuff. A question here from Jamie. He said that he tried MB200 but struggled because he lacked dynamics experience and the Microsoft Learn materials didn't really seem to match the exam. What would you recommend in terms of specific studying and learning for MB200 for somebody that's new to dynamics?
So the funny thing about the suggested path in terms of MB200 is they don't necessarily match what is actually in the exam. So what I can do is, if Microsoft let me, I would actually suggest other additional modules. So Jamie, I will be happy to post that on my LinkedIn and sort of put what is the actual learning path that people should follow. So that's one thing. Another thing in terms of MB200 is I would look at Neil Parker's blog. And if you can somehow get a sandbox, you can get a dynamics trial for 30 days if you have a business or corporate email address. And the sort of loophole is that you can get one 30-day trial per business email. So if you have multiple business emails, you can have multiple 30-day trials.
That is a good tip. I'll have to bear that in mind myself. Okay, a question here from Aftad. It's regarding the partner points that you were talking about. He's asked, do we count twice in partner points if we have two different functional consultant certs?
So for example, if you pass, which is my case because I have 4 functional consultant certifications, you do not count twice. However, what happens is if you get hired at a Microsoft partner between April 1st and October 1st, you count twice because you count under the functional consultant associate role. So technically you would count twice.
Okay. Next one is from Krinal. He's saying that I've got experience with the Power Platform and currently seeking jobs in the area in the US and Canada. So he's asking whether it would be better for him to focus on PL 900 or just go directly for MB 200 instead.
Okay, so that would be a very localized question. So did that particular individual pass any Microsoft certifications before?
I don't know. It didn't say. Krinal, if you feel free to chip in now on the chat, if you like.
Can be
Nope.
SharePoint, can be Azure, can be Office, any.
Yes, I gave an examination of Azure.
Okay, that's wonderful. So if you passed a Microsoft Azure certification, I would be comfortable recommending you to go for MB200 right away.
Okay, that's great. Apologies there, Crinal, in terms of just, that's fine. Okay, moving on question-wise. So somebody's asked, in my company, we've got a small team, 2 people. We're just starting out as a Microsoft partner.
Okay.
He's just wondering what their best route is in terms of becoming a partner with just 2 people.
Actually, under the old model, which is still valid technically until September 30th, which is you need to have 5 people at least for you to qualify under the silver level partner, which means technically speaking, you would have like 10 points at least under the certification, under the new points-based system. So if you're 2 people, honestly, it's going to be a challenge. But the moment that you grow and that you start getting more and more business, and that allows you to hire even more people, then once you get to 5 people, I would see if you qualify, because there's not just the certification piece, there's also revenue requirements and other things. So I can also post on my LinkedIn profile the link towards the Microsoft partner requirement, so you can have a look at it.
Okay, and then the final question we've got here is just on MB 901 in comparison to MB 900. How different, how similar are they in terms of the content and things that are sort of assessing on?
They're pretty much the same. The main difference between MB 900 and MB 901 is that MB 900 included very, very broadly both the Power Platform and Microsoft Dynamics 365, which means what sort of Microsoft did is that they split both exams, and they did the Microsoft Dynamics component a little more in depth in MB 901, and in the Power Platform, they did the same. So if you studied for MB 900, I would still revise the MB 901 curriculum, but I would say at least 80% of the way there.
So I guess this links to Gazelle's question here then, in terms of MB 901 would be your go-to destination then, given that MB 900 is now retired.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've also got a question here from Gulshan. What's the best strategy to time the exam, because the trial period to practice is only a month? What should be a sort of timetable, and where should we get some scenario questions, sample data, things like that?
My question is again, Gulshan, did you pass a Microsoft certification in your life, whatever product it is?
Feel free to unmute yourself, Gulshan, if you've got a microphone.
Okay, so Gulshan, did you pass any Microsoft product certification in your life, whether Azure development, Office, SharePoint, anything else? No, I'm a super user only. Okay, do you use Microsoft Dynamics 365 on a daily basis? And if yes, for how long? No, okay, so you're brand new. Okay, so in your case, what I would do is I would go for MB 901 first, just to familiarize yourself with the framework and the style of question, simply because MB 200 is actually quite a steep curve. I'm not lying here. So what I would do is I would pass MB 901, and you don't need a sandbox for MB 901. Once you pass MB 901, then you're ready to move on to MB 200. Once you read everything on Microsoft Learn, once you read Neil's blog, once you've done all of that great stuff, what I would do is at that point, I would go for a sandbox and then practice workflows, practice business rules, and a lot of the things that are mentioned in MB200.
Okay, and then the next one on the list here from Gautam, saying they mostly work on Power BI at the moment, Power BI, Power Apps, Logic Apps at the moment. What would be the sort of ideal certifications to help them along, and how would they best prepare for that, resource-wise?
Okay, so if you worked on Power BI, Power Apps, and Logic Apps on the daily, then I would probably, and you never pass any Microsoft certifications, I would go for PL 900 actually, because it's the first certification step towards the Power Platform. So I would go for that one first. Now, if you want to go for Microsoft Dynamics 365 afterwards, passing that is going to help you a lot if your goal is to pass MB200, which is the Dynamics 365 core, and then go for MB400, which is the developer exam. Because if you look at the curriculum of the developer exam, it's very Power Apps and Power Automate heavy. And in terms of resources, I can send you links on my, again, I have LinkedIn, so I can make a mega post of some sort. But the resources are that I mentioned on my PowerPoints is where I would start to look at. And then there's a bunch of other stuff out there on the internet. And I saw someone, by the way, in the chat mentioned Quizlet. I would not use Quizlet because I can tell you everything on Quizlet is actually brain dump questions. So stay far away from Quizlet, unfortunately.
I meant making your own Quizlets, like your own flashcards.
Oh no, like if you write your own question on Quizlet, that would be one thing that I highly, highly, highly encourage. But I can tell you that based on what I've seen on Quizlet in terms of their questions that are currently out there, unfortunately, all of them are brain dumps. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about brain dumps whatsoever. More,
No.
you were talking about writing out flashcards.
Perfect.
And, yeah, Quizlet's just a way to speed that up, so you can kind of on the go, whether it's on your iPhone or not using other people's materials, creating your own material.
Well, I think as we were saying in the chat, potentially create your own Quizlet app using Power Apps, because you're killing two birds with one stone then. So that could be a viable option.
I would go with like Joe's idea. That's even better.
Okay, Jamie's sort of asked, it's a very good question actually, is there any logic to the numbering system, considering that he thinks that MB200 went before 900? I think Aftad's followed up by saying the 900 series are all fundamentals.
Yeah, so actually there's now sort of a logic in terms of the numbering system now. So for some reason, Microsoft decided that across all Microsoft products, all the 900 series means you're passing an exam at the fundamentals level. All the MB, so MB exams are related to Microsoft Dynamics. Now, if you look at the 200 series, the logic behind it is that it's the functional consultant associate for CRM or customer engagement. Anything at MB 300 means you're passing a functional consultant associate certification for the finance and operations. Anything 400 means developer exam for the customer engagement. MB 500 is the developer exam for finance and operations. MB 600 is solution architect for customer engagement. And finally, MB 700 is solution architect for finance and operations. So that's the whole logic behind this numbering system.
Okay, and then final question. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this as well. MB600 beta. Have you sat it? Any thoughts on it? And also have you got any thoughts in terms of when it's going to be potentially live as well? Okay,
so the one thing about exams being live is from the moment it goes out of beta. No, sorry. from the moment they stopped taking people in the beta exam, which was on March 16 for MB600, that usually means there's like a 3-month gap between the moment they stop taking people for beta and the moment it goes out of beta. So usually we should expect that unless there's some major disruption in the Microsoft certification team because of COVID-19, usually that means it should go live around June 15. So in terms of my predicted out of beta date, it would be around June 15. In terms of any thoughts on it, the first thought that I'd like to mention is that Microsoft is starting to cozy up to a lot of those Microsoft Learning Partner, which means that if you look carefully in terms of the MB600, they mention the fact that the Microsoft Learning Partner course, which is more than $2,000 US, is pretty much mandatory. Now, I'm someone that I want to keep content in terms of learning content for Microsoft Dynamics 365 as affordable as possible. So right now what I'm doing is I'm building a course for MB901, going to launch that. Then I'm going to go for PL900, going to launch that. And then my next course that I'm going to go for after those two is going to be MB600. And I want to make sure that when I launch my course, that one, it's affordable, and two, that it's not going to be too grand, because I personally find that extremely frustrating and borderline unacceptable. So that's my first thought on it, which is something that kind of boils my blood every time I look at that statement. The other thing is what's going to be in it. Based on my understanding, is it's going to cover essentially a mix of all the functional consultant associate examination, which at the core product level. So I would say if you want to go for solution architect and that's your goal, you should pass MB200 without a doubt. I mean, it's mandatory. I would also look at passing ideally at least Dynamics 365 fundamentals, so that you have an overview of what's available in each product. Otherwise, I would pass literally all functional consultant associate examination, simply because you could technically be asked a question that happens to be in those materials. So I would say if you want to go for solution architect, MB200, at least one product examination, if not all of them. And I would go for MB901 before that. So what's going to be the content? Anything of that nature, plus some like very soft skills oriented questions, which means, can you talk to a client and ask them a question? A client reacts a certain way, what do you do? How do you gather requirements, and sort of like almost a BA examination per se. So that's what's on the exam based on my understanding. I did not go for the beta. I actually do not like to pass my exam in beta, simply because I wait 3 months for the result, which is not good for someone that has major exam anxiety. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
If it's helpful at all, so my comments on it at the moment, MB600, based on the beta, is that the learning materials out there do not cover the entire spec of the exam. So that's what I would sort of say on that at the moment, if you are thinking of sitting it.
In terms of the Microsoft Learn content?
Yeah, I mean, it covers some of the areas, but doesn't cover everything. So
it doesn't cover anything. And honestly, in terms of MB600, I feel like they did that on purpose, simply to, again, cozy up to those Microsoft Learning Partner, because let's be honest, if you're passing MB600, there's a very, very, very high chance. Okay, so I'm gonna mention about my problem in terms of the Microsoft Learning Partner content, and that mentioned on the MB600 because Chris asked a question. So no, that is actually false. So, okay, so the Microsoft Learning Partners are companies that offer official Microsoft training for a lot of Microsoft products. And the teachers who teach it are Microsoft certified trainers. Now, those courses, every time you want to get certified, those cost more than $2,000 US. So for me as a Canadian, that's even more. And the thing is, what happened with Mark and his EDX content is that what Mark thinks happened, and I would actually agree with him, is that those Microsoft Learning partners banded together and probably told Microsoft, if you don't pull those off, we are going to sue you for a breach of contract. And what happened is the Microsoft team took out Mark's courses on December 31st. Now, if you go to a Microsoft Learning partner for MB200, the bulk of the content is actually Mark's video. So it's not that his content is outdated, it's that there's a lot of FERD between Microsoft Learning partners and Microsoft themselves at the moment. So essentially what happens is MB600, the majority of the people who will go for that exam don't pay themselves. Usually their employer, which is usually a Microsoft partner or a very, very large end user, is going to pay for that. However, my problem with that is that some of the people that will take the exam are people that are already in the Microsoft space that, for example, are working at a small end user and they want to take their career to the next level by passing solution architect. So my issue with that, the drama. So my issue with that is that I want to make sure that as many people are able to pass and that financial reason is not a barrier for them to pass. So that's why I'm passing MB901 right now, despite the fact that I technically don't need to. That's why I'm going to pass PL900, even though I don't technically need to, so that when I go for MB600, I'm going to be able to build a course that's way cheaper and that really covers everything, simply because I think $2,000 US is way too much. Despite the fact that most of us who are going to pass it are well compensated. Chris says, yes, it is ridiculous. So yes, can you check A.Y. Kalman's post about MB600? Sure. By the way, it's really amazing that people are talking, let's go for solution architect. Oh.
Yeah, he's done a really nice and detailed post of his own experience on the exam, and it sort of
okay.
alludes to what I've spoken to already around that.
Yeah, so so I guess this is going to turn into a Vicky reacts to A.Y. Kalman's post live reaction. Oh, I think I read no. Okay, so there's actually another post that I read this morning, which also covers someone who passed MB600 in beta, which again I'm gonna link. And if you combine both of them, you actually get to have a pretty good idea of what's going to be in the exam once it goes out of beta. So once I'm done with MB901, when I'm done with PL900, I'm going to combine both of them, and then I'm going to make what the actual learning objectives are. Thanks, Vicky. Oh, well, thanks. Make some barbecue. We deliver the course in person for half the price. I don't have a barbecue. I can't have one in my apartment, but I can cook other stuff if you want. Wait, who's this? MB200, what? Oh, that's amazing. I just want to say thank you to whoever took the videos out of Mark course and downloaded them all and then uploaded them. That person should get a medal. And hopefully that whoever did it should leak the rest of it because they only got a quarter of it. Oh, wonderful. Oh, thank you. I'm actually going to take all of your link, Anand, and I'm going to link them actually in my MS Dynamics Certified, and then in one of my blog posts, which I cover like a big FAQ of how to get started on Dynamics. So that person, I really do not know how to thank that person, really. Mark is going to be extremely happy, by the way. So once this session is over and you guys are sick and tired of hearing me talking, I'm going to let Mark know the fact that someone was very smart and took all of his content. So kudos to that person, whoever that may be.
Okay. If anyone else has got any questions, now's the sort of last chance to either unmute, or otherwise we will probably look to stop the recording.
Yeah, because it's 2 minutes until the next session. So
yeah, exactly. Okay. So in which case then,
I have some resources. I still have Mark's content. Victoria can roll us some KC barbecue. We'll ping you with them. Wonderful, Chris. Send that to me. I'm actually gonna make like a blog post. If you have those resources from Mark's course, I'm gonna let him know that people took them, and I can make sort of a mega resource document and have all of it in one spot. Because it's going to be really, really useful, especially for people who are starting out. Mark's content was mind-blowingly amazing, so I'm happy that people took it.
great stuff. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks, Vicky.